Sunday Night Football, Dallas Cowboys, Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the top two historical teams in the NFL, and neither one of them are exactly firing on all cylinders at this point. That being said, I did think that this was a golden opportunity for the Steelers coming off of their loss last week against the Indianapolis Colts to sort of, stay afloat in this whole race. You have the Ravens behind them who seem to be starting to heat up. And the Steelers, on the other end, do seem to be a little bit rudderless, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where we have been sort of singing Justin Fields' praises for the past few weeks about the improvements that he's making within that Steelers offense. And now we're seeing some real limitations. Really was not much of a passing attack whatsoever for Fields in this game. He was 15 of 27 with just 131 yards and 2 touchdowns. He provided a little bit more in the running game as well, and you could see him extending plays. But obviously, unfortunately, part of it with Fields is he can extend plays to his own demise to some degree as well. And I think that you're just starting to see the more erratic parts of him. Now, it's not that I thought Justin Fields was terrible. I thought that this was a bad offensive approach, truthfully, from Arthur Smith and this Steelers offense. Not taking advantage of the run game. And listen, they are without Jalen Warren and Cordarrelle Patterson for this game. They're second and third string running backs. But Najee is definitely a flawed running back, absolutely. I think he should have been able to go for far more than 42 yards as your lead back in this game. And it's a couple things. It's on Najee himself for never really living up to his draft stature from 2021 when he was a first-round pick. But, the offensive line as well is one that we've been highlighting throughout the past month or so of the year, that I don't think they're at the level where they need to be. But the inability to take advantage of what is, or at least should be, a diminished Cowboys defense. You add to that as well that Micah Parsons is out, DeMarcus Lawrence is out, their second-round rookie Marshawn Kneeland, I believe, left this game. I might have possibly made a return later in the game, but he leaves the game early in the first quarter. I don't think that he was all too available for them in this game. So you talk about the amount of injuries for the Cowboys on the defensive side of the ball, and this is now at a point with the Steelers where I do think that there are real concerns, and it definitely opens up the door for Russell Wilson to be able to step in. Now, personally, I would still stick with Justin Fields. I've been pro Justin Fields over Russell Wilson headed into the season. I'm not necessarily going to vary off of that yet, but at least based off of what the reporting has been surrounding this game and the overall situation, it does feel like there is still an outside chance that Russell Wilson could step in and become the starting quarterback once again. But, let us know in the comments section what your thoughts are on that. As much as the offense is still a bit, disgrace feels aggressive, but the Steelers offense has been very much lackluster. This wasn't a great defensive game either, and you're talking about back-to-back weeks where there are some offenses that really aren't all that spectacular who are putting up yards on them. Last week, it was Joe Flacco stepping in for Anthony Richardson in the middle of action. I gave the Steelers a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. I think that Joe Flacco is still a very fine quarterback. I thought that he reinforced that idea with his performance against the Jaguars just yesterday. But either way, again, throw that one in the trash a little bit. It's always a difficult situation to navigate when you get such a drastic change at quarterback, but also the adjustment is more so on the Colts in that game as well. So maybe I'm even being too nice to the Steelers defense. Not being nice to them in this game, where the Cowboys outgained them 445 yards to 226. Now, they made stops in the red zone. This should not have been a game, is the reality of the situation, because the Cowboys were going up and down the field. They turned the ball over in the red zone a couple times. They get a field goal blocked as well, that the Steelers had every chance to be able to sort of build off of the momentum created, yes, from their defense. So, this whole bend, don't break idea, I give the Steelers defense credit for that. It was also just poor play, I thought, from Dallas, where Dak Prescott really didn't look excellent in this game. He finished 29 of 42, 352 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Now, the Cowboys are a very clearly flawed offense, which is why I'm more so harsher on the Steelers in this situation. The fact that the Cowboys were able to have so much success on the run. Rico Dowell, a pretty nice game for him, 20 carries for 87 yards. The offense as a whole averaged 3.5 yards per carry, which is a pretty significant mark, over 100 yards on the ground against the Steelers defense. I think any Cowboys fan would have taken that number coming into this week. And then from a receiving standpoint, it was a hot start for CeeDee Lamb, but really after that interception that Dak threw, it was in that first half, in the first quarter, I believe itself. I can, double check on the exact timing of it. Appears like it might have been actually late in the second quarter, where Dak was throwing to CD. There was clearly some sort of a miscommunication there, and then it was, at least on the broadcast televised, that CeeDee Lamb had some words for Dak Prescott sitting on the sideline, where a lot of the lip-reading experts out there were talking about the throw of CeeDee Lamb just sort of disappointed, saying subpar ball to Dak Prescott. And Dak ultimately, he leads the drive at the end of the game to be able to go out and win that at the end. Now, again, some good success on the ground for them in that drive as well. But Dak to be able to, after seeming to be so out of order for a lot of the game, CeeDee Lamb, he had just one catch, I believe it was, after the first quarter, and it was on that touchdown drive right at the end there for the Cowboys. But, CeeDee Lamb, he seems to have a lot of frustration, and it's a situation where Lamb, after having his little outburst against Dak during that Ravens game a couple weeks ago, he said he reflected on it and he felt better. It wasn't super explosive necessarily. I thought that he kept his emotions in check. So I'm definitely not going to butcher CeeDee Lamb by any means because of that. But he talked about this idea that, he's going to grow from it and he's not going to make that mistake again. It wasn't the exact same mistake, and I can't even say it was a mistake because he was calling out his quarterback for what was a very bad throw. But that being said as well, there's clearly some sort of a divide or a block that's building between Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, that they just have not been on the same page, really going back to that playoff game last year against the Packers, where things were very clearly off then, and we really haven't seen that combination fully emerge just yet. And you wonder if there's, some pent-up emotions being built up on the side of these two players. Really hard to quite put a finger on it because I think that they are both top 10 players at their position. Now, Dak, making the case for him being a top 10 quarterback is probably a little bit more difficult. I still feel like I would stand by that take. I had him as his top 10 quarterback coming into this season, and I don't think that he's been lapped necessarily by all too many guys. Now, there are players that individually have been playing better, but in terms of at their core, if I need you to go, show out in a big moment, I understand that Dak doesn't have an elite track record at that, but he's also, been one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Even if he's not elite, he has been one of the best quarterbacks in the league for the past few seasons. So, again, I'm having a really hard time putting a finger on exactly what it is with that Cowboys offense that isn't there, and specifically referring to that relationship between Dak or CD. But it's another game where, the Cowboys win. You have to give them credit for that. It's a pretty solid win without a number of their top players to be able to go into a hostile environment in Pittsburgh in terrible weather. You have the weather delay at the beginning and still be able to come out on top. That's great. Still haven't been super convincing, really, in either of these past two wins. Now, you get on the board. At the end of the day, the most important stat is the win as opposed to the loss. So the Cowboys will take it. I still don't feel very good about them and their overall long-term Super Bowl aspirations for this season. It's not like there are a ton of teams really in the NFC that feel like they are going to, really be vying for that playoff positioning quite as much as the Cowboys. I do feel like the NFC North as a whole, that is easily the most talented division at this point. Now with the Vikings at 5-0, and we're going to be talking about that game a little bit later as well. But now with the Vikings at 5-0, this is a situation where I feel like ultimately they are able to, maybe build on some things. And at this point, really what I'm getting at is the Vikings are now very solidified in the playoff hunt here, and it would take sort of a lot for them to now collapse and be able to fall out of it, which is possible, but I think that they're in it. I think that the Lions and the Packers are certainly in it. The Chicago Bears continue to improve on a week-to-week basis, so they're in the hunt as well. You look at the NFC West, that division's wide open. Right now it's the Seahawks leading there, even though they're coming off of 2 straight losses as well. That all of those teams are still sort of in the hunt. The 49ers I don't expect to be going anywhere. The Cardinals, as soon as I sort of wanted to lean in towards getting off of them, they pull off an upset win against the 49ers, so they could have their hat in the mix. There are teams, like the Cowboys should not be sitting comfortably right now. Now, again, 3-2 is not a bad position to be in, but I think we need to start to see a lot better production on the field from their offense is really what it comes down to as well, because their defense played well in this game, and give them their props. Specifically, DeMarvion Overshown has become, a real standout player for them on defense, and ideally they're going to get healthier from here. But as things stand right now, they are a defense that can get moved around a little bit. Didn't quite come up in this game, but I think the Cowboys are not quite at contention level. Now, they benefit from playing in the NFC East, which hasn't looked great, but now you also have the Commanders in the mix along with the Eagles. There are a lot of obstacles for the Cowboys moving forward here, so I don't think they can be feeling great. Steelers have to be feeling pretty poor. We'll see what the reporting around that Justin Fields and Russell Wilson situation is as the week plays out here, but let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section on this game, as we are going to be pivoting a little bit and moving on to the thrilling game between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals that occurred earlier in the afternoon. So we're going to be diving into that game, but before we do so, we're going to have to take a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.